Welcome to the Strategic Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Macias, and today we have a special guest. His name is Ronni Shino. Ronnie, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Brandon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Ronnie, you have a pretty impressive education, two doctorates. I want to talk a little bit about that because that was that was a hustle on its own, right? Getting to the point that you are right now, and you're still pursuing education, as we spoke about before we started here. So let's talk a little bit about how higher education shapes your thinking and discipline in business.
Higher education has its benefits. However, from my experience, you need to have some kind of drive or knowledge or passion in that pursuit because having the degree is not enough. I mean, a lot of people will get it and rely on it, and that's fine. But it's like a tool. And unless you know how to use the tool or you enjoy using that tool, it won't serve you well. I mean, a hammer to a framer, right? They love their hammer. They will buy one of the most expensive hammers you can get your hands on. To the average individual, it doesn't make any sense. But a $700 hammer to a framer that makes six, potentially maybe even seven figures a year, depending on what he contracts, it's worth it, right? But he enjoys swinging that hammer, and that's the thing. So having the right tools is part of it, but enjoying using those tools is a completely separate part that I don't think many people actually really put any mind to.
I've had that conversation with a few people. A teacher, for example, he immigrated from China and he spoke to me about pens. He bought a $2,000 pen. Why did he buy this pen? And why did he spend that much money on it? Because he uses pens every day in China as a teacher. Now, you ask anybody else, how much would you pay for a pen? They might not even tell you $2, right? But because he's a teacher and, he loves his craft, he loves his tools, he spent that money. So that makes so much sense, right? Now, talking about, passion, do you find that you have that passion for education and that's why you continue to pursue that education, and have it coincide with your business?
It's not just the education, it's what I have leaned more towards, especially over the last several years, is personal development, is building yourself up because a lot of things can be taken away from you. And as we've seen from the last 5, 6 years, people have lost jobs, families, loved ones. It's a very long list, but what you are, what you become, and how you build yourself, you can't lose that. So, education is important, yes, but more than education, it's discovering who you are or who you want to be and building upon that because a lot of people will pursue certain ventures and they're motivated, but to be quite frank with you, motivation is not enough. Even passion is not enough. I think there's a certain level of discipline that must be there in order for you to be successful regardless of what you do. I mean, what in my line of work right now, I'm dealing with a lot of cancer patients. We're doing a lot of different consulting, and to not have a schedule where you're working 2, 3 in the morning, and then you're up at 7, and then you're going to sleep at noon. It's not something that's enjoyable, but if you get fulfillment from it, I think that's what makes it easier. And just that, in a nutshell, I would probably say is a lot of people in the world right now don't have that fulfillment and they try to seek it, in any way which place they can find it, right? Whether it's the gym, whether it's the bar, whether it's certain vices, uh, could be a conflict between a spouse, something just to fill that void. But I think fulfillment is what's lacking right now. And but I do apologize. I digress.
No, I love this topic because, like you said, it's growing more and more evident, right, in society today that people are looking to fill that void. And it can be done in so many different ways, but unfortunately, um, a lot of it is social media, and this is going to be part of it. But things like this, giving that education and maybe shedding light on things that shouldn't be made as important in someone's life, right? Because it obviously steals from what's more important, right? Shiny object syndrome is a thing.
You know, I'll say this with respect to education, because I always encourage people to pursue further education. I mean, I'm not medically licensed, but I do attend through my previous work as a surgical assistant. I do attend McMaster conferences, all different ones, whether it's the pain program, upper extremities, psychiatry, because I like to stay current in that field with their guidelines. I just would like to know, what is current, what is the process, what is the guideline, the regulation. Even though I'm not paid for it, I actually have to pay to go, but it is something I feel solidifies my work in what I do. It gives me a bit of an advantage. Whereas, having a title or a degree, it gets you recognized. It gets your foot in the door most times, but that's only half the battle, right? Who you are and what you bring to the table, I think, is what's missing. And a lot of people think the degree will do the heavy lifting, and it really won't. Having, for example, a doctor title, that might get you the respect, but that's pretty much it. I mean, it doesn't mean you know what you're doing. And as we've seen in the last 5, 6 years, a lot of physicians, and I will throw, them under the bus here, including myself, just because they're licensed does not mean they know what they're doing. And sometimes someone's blessing is their curse. If you're an expert in your field, you're only an expert in your field. So anything else anybody brings to the table, even if it's rooted in logic and rationale, you'll just disregard it. You'll say, no, that can't exist. I mean, it's like a mechanic, modern day mechanics that have self-driving cars, and you say, oh, well, what about a standard car, or a floor shift vehicle? And they're gonna be like, no, that doesn't exist. That's blasphemy. What do you mean? Manual, clutch. Listen to this guy. Get a hold of this guy. Clutch. He has to,
Yeah.
to press a pedal to shift gears. you know, so that's what I've seen, especially in the medical industry. It's become very singular, and anything else that has potential, they just disregard it. But again, I tie this back to education, because the more multifaceted you can become, I think it just sharpens who you are as an individual overall. And there's nothing in the world, I mean, anybody you talk to, anybody you interview at a high level, ultra high net worth or high net worth individuals will have one common denominator: self development, personal development. You can never go wrong with that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you kind of tied that into business where keeping up with technology, innovation, right? Everything is changing. And especially now, with AI, everything is changing at a pace that many people can't keep up, right? But that being said, if you're not trying to keep up, well, then you get left behind, right? And um, so always keeping up to date with that, that constant wheel of innovation, definitely I agree is key. Now, talking about one's self growth, self development, what would you recommend? I mean, this stage of your career, you're still seeking, self development, right? What do you recommend to somebody that maybe is in the later part of their entrepreneurship journey, let's say 5 years in, and maybe they hit a roadblock where they don't know what step to take? What would you recommend to somebody in that at that point in their life?
Change the focus from you to other people. Ensure that you're living a life of service. Be of service. I find a lot of times when people focus on themselves, um, and I'm also guilty of this, you're always going to have stress and problems. You have debts, you might have, health goals that you haven't achieved, family issues, whatever the case. But that focus is on yourself. If you shift that focus to others, it alleviates you having those worries, because now you're not focused on your problems, you're focused on other people's problems, and developing solutions to those problems, giving them your time and attention, will not only improve your position, but it will actually improve your life as a whole. And where I go with that is, if I focus on all the bills and everything I have, it becomes pretty heavy. But if I focus on the patients, the clients, and giving them the best version of myself, resolving their problems in turn does resolve mine. And we've taken that approach through business, and it's honestly served us well. I can't think of a single time where I've made any decision rooted in that rationale and it has let me down. It's always been a positive. But I think that's where I find a lot of people get stuck is they focus on themselves too much, right? I mean, I've reached a point now where people are calling and relying on me to give them advice, opinions, recommendations. Um, they are now my focus, right? I can't, I don't have time to focus on myself anymore, but the more I help them, the more in turn my life improves. And it's not that I'm pursuing a higher quality of life, it's just that's what comes with the territory. It's if you help enough people, it will reciprocate. It's the law of the land. It's just how it is.
That's my shining light, right? I'm a follower of God, and He's always the one that really brings me back to that, right? Being a servant, and always putting that first, right? As much as it is hard, and some people look at the money aspect of things, or look at, um, how it benefits you, but giving back, and having that in mind, and having passion alongside that, that really changes somebody's perspective, and it gives you a sense of gratitude that, that's changed a lot for me in my life personally.
You hit a bit of a hot topic there, and that's going to be it's going to have to be for another day. But money is the other one as well. But we'll leave that for another day. It's I think
Yeah.
the missing factor, in this discussion we're having is that people have lost faith. Regardless of what they practice, the faith is not there, and I think the most important is they've lost faith in themselves. Is what I see in the world today.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're in this field of work, and I know you talk to a lot of people about mental health, and mental struggle. That kind of is a good segue to somebody who is performing at, a high level, somebody who has a very active lifestyle. How does taking care of that mental health, how does that serve its purpose in somebody with that elite performance mentality?
Well, it ties back again from my experience, on this topic. It's not making things about yourself, right? It's living a life of service. I'm taken back right now because there's a video that I saw of, I believe it was Anderson Cooper, and his brother had committed suicide, and Stephen Colbert, I believe is his name. He was asking him a question, and it was about suicide. And I don't think at the time um, Colbert knew during the topic of that interview, that discussion, the course of that discussion, that Anderson Cooper's brother had committed suicide. And you can see Cooper choked up a little bit when he's asking the question. And the takeaway was to be grateful, to have gratitude because it is a gift. I believe the line was to lose, to suffer, because without that, you wouldn't recognize what winning is. I look back at all my losses and how much I've suffered, and I think it's a kind of a fork in the road, right? You can either succumb to it and victimize yourself, or you can learn and grow from it. And I think the latter would never let you down. I mean, every time, and I have been guilty of that. I've let anger get the best of me and emotions, but if you can emotionally regulate and just ask yourself a simple question, would it help? If something comes up, when it comes to, any topic, would it help? How you react, will it help? If it won't, then maybe choose a different path, right? Choose a different decision or make a different decision. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, especially when it comes to mental health. They always make things about themselves. Where if you shift that spotlight to somebody else that might need your help, you'd be surprised at the effect it has, the impact it has. I mean, there's people everywhere that need help, right? Just the other day, I was going to get something from the convenience store, and somebody asked me for a smoke. Um, I personally don't smoke. I used to for a very brief moment when I was younger, and I quit. But at that time, the only thing I can offer him is a cigarette, right? And I went back inside. I purchased a pack and I gave him one, right? But that wasn't just a cigarette. It was a few things. I saw him, right? He's not just a homeless person. I saw him and he recognized that. So that is having a positive impact. And that does have a ripple effect, because whoever else he interacts from that point moving forward, it will be in a positive way. Whereas if I had given him attitude or maybe, brushed him off and pretended he doesn't exist, he's now carrying that energy with him, and a lot of people don't realize that will come back. The energy you put out there will come back. And it doesn't, I mean, in my case, yeah, it cost me a pack of cigarettes, but I don't really care. That's besides the point. It's what you're putting out there. So whether it's in a relationship, whether it's with the general public, especially around mental health, in my opinion, I think if you shift the focus from your problems and you move it to helping other people in the world, you'd be amazed at how your life improves. I can't explain it. I wouldn't even know where to start, but all I can say is from personal experience and those that I know that have come before me, it's never let them down. And it's remarkable.
That's great. I mean, you're an advocate for it. Was there a point in your life that maybe you didn't have that give mindset?
It was when I was younger, and again, your surroundings have a lot to do with you, right? The friends, the networks, where you study, where you spend your time. Um, a giving mindset has always produced more. It's always reciprocated more. Whereas when I saw or when I was around people that were more concerned about saving or being frugal, um, they also had a very, I don't want to say subpar, but a lower quality of life. Where the people that gave, and I'm not saying spend carelessly, but give with good intention, right? And I find the people that did that um, had a higher quality of life, and soon enough, a lot of them became very wealthy. And a few of them I still have the privilege of working with, of speaking with, and it is incredible. It is honestly miraculous the progress they've made. I mean, I can't. It has to be divine in nature because it's some of the things that I've witnessed just don't make any sense. That kind of growth, that kind of potential. But then when you look at the person as an individual, it makes a lot of sense, right? So there's a lot of spirituality that's based in this as well, and I think that's the dividing factor between the course of people's lives is how they carry their mindset. But yeah, there was a moment when I was younger, and I noticed fairly quickly. I just looked to people that I wanted to have a similar lifestyle, and I basically studied them. Who are they? What are they? How do they interact with people? How do they articulate themselves? How do they handle certain situations? And I took that, learned from it, and used it to become a better version of myself. And I still do today, right? It's an ongoing process. But that's basically it in a nutshell.
That's great. I think I'm struggling with that, to be honest with you right now. I'm more of the frugal side. So me thinking so much about giving, like I said, I'm spiritual and
Mhm.
I believe in God. And in the Bible it does say give 10% of what your earning is to God and to the church. And for me, that personally, that's a tough thing for me to do, right? Because I grew up that way, being more frugal and focusing more on what my investments are, or just, really thinking that that is the entrepreneur mindset. But you really have to shift your mindset on that. There's human nature to all of this, right? An entrepreneur, it's not just about making good investments and putting your money in the right stocks and being at a table with the rich and wealthy. That's not what this is all about, right? Especially playing the long game. So what you're talking about right now is hitting home for me. I appreciate all of it.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Ronnie, what about goal setting? How important is that to you in this point in your life?
It always has been. Goal setting, it's a metric, and I like metrics. They're measurable, so goal setting is very important, and it doesn't have to be. You can have macro goals and micro goals. You know, you can have small and big. Um, the big goals are important, but the small goals, I think, in my opinion, is what allows everything to come together. You know, the small goals are the mortar between the bricks and the stones, right? You can have big goals, but something needs to carry those goals. You know, it's I mean, I could let's use an example. Um, you get a Rolls Royce right now. It's given to you free of charge in your name. Registration is done. Could you afford the monthly payment or the insurance? Could you, where are you going to keep it? Can you afford the maintenance? Right. So those are the small goals. You know, you can have big goals and achieve them, but in order to sustain them and keep them going, to have something of substance, the small goals matter. And that could be something as simple as you walk into the house and if you see the throw pillow or the throw blanket on the couch is misaligned, correct it. Right. There's dishes in the sink, clear them out. You know, it's small little things, or for the people that have cats, I have cats. If you see the litter box is, they've gone number two or what have you, right away, clear it out. So these small little things build these neural connections in your mind where you're automatically fixing these small little tasks and addressing them, and that ultimately leads to bigger tasks, right? It's just an ongoing process, but the small goals ultimately give oxygen to the big goals to breathe. And right now I'm actually going through that right now. I have the DBA and the PhD, and as big as they are and as complex some of the assignments are, and the thousands upon thousands of words, if that big goal would not be possible, if the small goals of just being able to sit down with myself, opening the laptop and just one word at a time, just doing it, taking a break, coming back, right? So just having the discipline of small little, micro accomplishments gives you this kind of drive. It's this feeling of success, like, okay, I finished that. Like you might not realize it, but just subconsciously knowing that you've checked all these things off your list, it almost gives you this newfound energy that it just
Yeah.
comes over you. You don't even know from where, but you're like, damn, I'm driven now. Like I really want to keep going with this. Right. So it's a repetitive cycle. It's all it is. And it's a good habitual process to be in.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more. I heard from a mentor of mine, and he gave a great example about micro habits. It was an Olympian, I cannot remember his name, but he had a goal of a certain time to hit at the end of this marathon. But instead of focusing on that end goal, getting that time, not even the pace he paid attention to, but what he did pay attention to was the watts. So the technology now, he was able to calculate how many watts each step would take. His goal, his micro goal, was to actually achieve 380 to 400 watts each step he would take during a run. And it didn't matter if it was a little bit of an incline, it didn't matter if it was a flat surface, but during the race, he maintained those watts and he ended up surpassing his big goal. I thought that was a really, really great example of, implementing a small micro habit in order to get, where you want to be. Right. Ronnie, it was great to have you, man. I appreciate all your insight. I took a lot of stuff out of this too, that I'm gonna implement in my own life, honestly. I can't wait to have you back on and we can talk about some other things that you're working on. I'd love to hear about them, and I know everybody else can learn from it too.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It was a privilege to be here. I thank you for that.
Thanks, Ronnie. You have a good one.
Take care. Bye bye.